Welcome back to Don't Lift Off. So today I'm going to be speaking to Lars Sexton. Now, I've known Lars from the 1990s when we were both doing karting. He was doing junior TKM when I was doing 100 TKM seniors, and then when I raced 100C, he did Formula A. And our paths have loosely crossed over the last 30-odd years, did a little bit of work at Silverstone. And I last saw him during lockdown, or just post-lockdown in 2020 at Alton Park, and we compared notes on divorces. So that was an interesting time of our lives. And I've not actually seen him in the flesh since, although we did share some karting stories during lockdown to keep ourselves and everyone else entertained. So that was a great service that Lars provided to the motorsport community. I'm really looking forward to catching up with him. I've friends on Facebook, and we've got lots of mutual friends, lots of stories, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to catching up with someone from karting in the 90s, which I haven't actually covered that much on my podcast yet. So yeah. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribing to Don't Lift Off is free of charge. Thanks, Matt Kelly, for reminding me about that one. So, yeah, please press the button, whichever. It's the bell button down at the bottom there for us old fogies that haven't got a clue what's going on. For you youngsters, you'll know what's going on. But, yeah, if you could subscribe, that would make it fantastic. What am I talking about? I've got no idea. Hell, whatever. Don't lift off. Tell there's literally nothing formal about anything. So yeah, I was listening to your podcast. How long ago was that done?
That was before lockdown, so that's probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I love the era. I love that era of karting. I love karting. Absolutely, so passionate about the sport that it was. Not necessarily the sport that it is now, but what a phenomenal time to be involved. And Mike O'Neill is just, I called him the Flavio Briatore of
Yeah,
karting, and he said, "No, Ron Dennis, because I look more like him."
yeah, that's
Um,
right. Yeah.
But considering Mike O'Neill was like a media guru, I just said, "Look, Mike, I want to do this podcast with you and Biff Harris." And they got some stories. I know, Biff would be round the paddock, and you'd think he'd be having a can of Coke, but it would be like rum and Coke. Just so many funny stories. So I got those two together. Literally went to Mike O'Neill's house, and Mike O'Neill was like, "Right, we're going to need microphones and cameras." And I was like, "No, Mike, no, Mike. I've
No,
just got two iPhones." We
yeah,
went into his games room and just recorded this fantastic podcast with Mike and Biff telling stories about racing in Europe.
yeah,
Paul Carr was involved.
yeah.
You name it, people were talked about, and it was such a casual chat, just like we're having now. And I think that's when it's best and it's more authentic.
Yeah, 100% it is. Yeah. Yeah, all of those people, because I mean, I only did karting, well, it's from 91 to 95. So I was probably in it less time than you, but obviously I remember you from those. Well, I suppose we remember each other from those times, although we never raced.
Shellington lads, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. Where are you? Are you a Banbury boy originally, are you?
No, I'm Reading. We're Reading, so we were always Reading. But Shenny was our local track.
Shenny
Shennington,
was local, yeah.
Rissington, Blackbush, obviously, but that was small. But
Right.
yeah, yeah.
No,
But
well,
that's
yeah, I was just going to say, I first remember you from, well, so I started 91, so I think you were in junior TKM in 91-ish, weren't you?
cadets start maybe just going from cadets to junior TKM. So yeah, we started in the 88, 89 probably.
Okay.
Did
80s,
cadets.
80s karting. Now we're talking.
Yeah, I think so. Late 80s we started. And then did junior TKM, and that's obviously probably when remember. Did you do senior TKM or
Yeah. So I started,
national?
yeah, so I started seniors because I was 18, and then I did like 2.5 years of TKM, and then went on to 100C as it was rebranded. It used to be national
Yes.
green plates, and then yeah, 100C.
And was it your uncle that used to mechanic for you?
Yeah, my uncle
Yeah.
Cliff. Let me just turn this round. Well, so you can just about see the kart there. So
Yeah,
that was the
brilliant.
final year. That was 95. But yeah, my
Yeah.
uncle. Do you know what? Actually, I was supposed to prepare and get that for if you look at the podcast I've just done with the farmer
He's got an
lad.
Andy Cox by Andy Cox top. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
love it, love
that
it.
was my uncle Cliff. Yeah, yeah, and he was Andy's mechanic before that. But yeah, my Uncle Clifford and Stephen, they were like Grant and Phil and Grant Mitchell.
Well, I think if we had a good race at Shennington or I won or something, we'd stop off at the petrol station not too far down the road and I'd get like some sweets and an ice cream. And I
Yeah,
think one time we stopped in there, I think your uncle was in there. So yeah, it's
really.
great, great stories, man. Good times.
Yeah, yeah, the Hayford Mafia, they were those boys. There's no mess. There was. Can you remember Dave Catt?
Well, so I'm good pals with Dave Catt.
Are you?
And I told him. So sadly, my dad passed away in January.
Yeah,
Left a bit of a big hole really in our lives because whilst he was a miserable, grumpy bastard, he did so much for me and my brother, and we miss him a lot. So we didn't have a funeral, but we had a wake, and Dave Catt, bless him, drove all the way up from Kent where he lives to come to the wake. And I said, Catty, you've got to listen to Dunny's podcast because he mentioned you. And he's like,
yeah,
really? So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
great guy.
yeah. Well, so when I started TKM, that was 91, and I was on novice plate. So Dave Catt was the reigning Midland champion, number
Love it.
28 number plate.
That's it. Yeah.
And he always used to run really wide axle. And if you remember, he always used to run super wide rims and really wide axle. And every
Yeah.
corner, he'd just be like fully backing it into every corner. But I remember having like a real scrap with him at, I think it was at Shennington. And I was on novice plates. I was a complete Billy, like just kept running into him. And he came and had a word with me afterwards, like, why you keep running into me? Just had a bit of a go at me. So Grant and Phil Mitchell got sent round to Catty's to Catty's awning and had a word. You got a problem with him, boy? You got a problem with us both?
Love it. I
But
love
after
it.
that, do you know what? We never had a crossword after that, and he was super friendly towards us. And years later, it must have been, I reckon, probably 20 years later, I went to do some BMW training down in
Yes.
Reading, where the
Well,
BMW headquarters.
that's a couple of miles away from where I am now.
Right, right. At the golf
That's it.
centre. I
Yeah,
can't remember the names of it.
Wakefield Park.
There you go,
Wakefield Park. Yeah.
Wakefield Park. Now I know it would have been. I think it was when we did the Z4 launch, the Generation Two, Series Two Z4 with the hard top folding roof. So that'd have been 2009. Who was the lead trainer? Dave Catt. I was like, no fucking way,
He is a
no way.
lovely, lovely, lovely person. And so Catty, he was racing, and my dad could never really push because he had bad legs from rugby and everything. David Catt and his mates. He used to hang around with Leon McDonald. Leon as well.
Yeah, no,
That's
Liam.
Spannerdford.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they used to hang around. But anyway, there was him and a couple of his mates from down here. They used to travel all the way around the country to all the British Championships rounds. Just drive up in a car on a Friday night, pitch a tent, drink beer with his mates, and be around to push and help me dad mechanic and push the car off the grid, just
No
to get
way.
involved. And if you spoke to him now, he's been involved with some serious peddlers that have made Formula One and stuff. From the Buckmore Kart Shop days when they run the Buckmore Kart Shop, he's
Ah,
he's
yeah.
really been involved with some.
That was where
Um,
I saw him in a karting context. I went to
yes,
Buckmore a little while ago to and I was coaching a lad for the weekend, and Dave was in there then. And that's
yeah.
what he said because he was running a few karts, I seem to remember as well.
He was running the kart shop, I think his team was.
Right.
Jack Aitken, I think he came through his team, I
Okay.
think. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that, but he got some good stories. And so yeah, he came to Dad's wake, and then the Beasley, you would probably know him, but Darrell and Jamie Beasley, mega kart racers, they come to the wake as well, and they're local boys. So we had a good chat.
Yeah, nice. It's nice catching up with people from the early days. I mean, I'm still, loosely in touch with some of them. Some of the people that we were talking about um earlier, like Chris Hartley. Chris
Yeah.
Hartley is one of the first guys I met in karting, and I messaged him actually. I said, "Do you fancy doing a podcast?" He said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "I'm just a bit busy at the moment, but let's have a chat in May. So I'm looking
Brilliant.
forward to getting Chris on sometime. And, can you remember when he started commentating at
Yeah.
Rizzy?
Yeah, yeah. I remember, Midland Champs and all of that. I remember because I did Midland Champs in cadets, junior TKM. Then I came back years later and won it in national. Had a great race with Adrian Coles.
Okay.
So yeah, I would remember Chris from there. But you say, I've watched a lot, not all of them, but I've watched a lot of your podcasts, and I'm like, when I saw you at Alton Park and I hadn't seen you for years.
Yeah.
That you know, I just love meeting and chatting to decent people, and there's a lot of decent people from that era in motorsport, single seaters, you name it.
Yeah.
And I really love people, and I really love having a good chat. And so yeah, your guests have been brilliant. I think surprisingly, I've got to say, Dunny, the most inspiring one for me, which caught me off guard a little bit because I didn't even know the guy, Brad Philpott.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never even heard of the guy because I'm kind of like a bit off the radar and don't really get massively involved.
Yeah.
Was so inspirational.
Yeah.
What what a guy! Like,
Yeah.
what a doer, a proper
Yeah.
doer.
Yeah.
Really inspirational, mate. Really good.
Yeah. I work with Brad quite a bit on car launches and electric vehicle training, actually. And yeah, he's always enthusiastic. He's just unstoppable in terms of enthusiasm, and he's doing well with his YouTube channel. I think he's got like 17,000 odd subscribers. He's got a little merch shop
Wow.
on there, and when I before we did the podcast, I actually went over to his house, and he talked me through what he's done and how much effort he's put in the last couple of years. And yeah, it was good to get into to know him better, actually. And that's one of the things that what this is about is because I say probably some quite controversial things on Facebook and whatever, but it's perceived as controversial. And it's funny because you end up in like a scrap on a keyboard,
I don't
and you
get
end up
involved,
like
mate.
you end up annoying each other and blocking each other. And you're just like, you'd never say that in a conversation. Do you know what I mean? You'd never say it
Yeah,
down the
I don't.
pub.
I don't get involved. I stay well out of it. But yeah, some
Tell me
people
the
have. Yeah.
secret of that, because I
Yeah,
need to
I
learn that.
just everybody, who says who's right or wrong? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've all been conditioned in some way, shape, or form. Everybody's got an opinion. I've got opinions on stuff, drivers and things that I think's right, things that I think's not aren't right. Doesn't mean to
Hmm.
say I'm right. It's just my opinion, and we're all, yeah, let's all have an opinion. Yeah, but I don't get involved. I steer clear, mate. Life's hard
I
enough
get
as it
stuck in,
is.
but then thankfully I've got something like this to keep me focused and earning a living so I can afford to pay the mortgage.
But no, I mean, Chris Hodgetts, he's a national treasure, old Chris. Who hasn't that guy had some input in with regards to driver coaching and stuff? What a legend, him and Stefan. I really enjoyed the Michael Verges one. I thought that was
Verge, yeah.
fantastic. Fantastic old school stories, mate. You're just really enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, mate, what you did during lockdown was great. And, basically that's kind of how we reconnected, wasn't it? It was just
Yeah.
like, right, who's from 1990s karting? Tell us your old stories. The Paul Rivette one was brilliant. Paul Rivette starting his mum's car, rolled down the bank and drove across the track when he was like in cadets or something like that.
I couldn't believe it. Oh, we were just like hang on, there's the race. We're not going to race for a bit, and there's this Peugeot, I think 205 or something, on its roof on the first corner.
Did he actually
And
roll it?
oh, mate, so he took it brilliantly, old Paul, during COVID. He kind of like I think he did his own little video about no, this is really what happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Somebody asked him to move the car or asked his dad to move it, and he thought, oh, I'm 8, I'm 9, I race karts, I can move it. And I think he went to move it, and it just went horribly wrong. And at Blackbush, the cars were at the top, and there was a little ledge where people walked. How he didn't seriously hurt somebody, I don't know how everybody got away unscathed. But he went down the first bit of the bank, I think tried to stop it on the ledge and turned it and then rolled sideways over and totaled it in the middle of the track. But again, Paul Rivet, he's had an amazing career in
Yeah.
in racing, out of nothing, really.
Well, I employed him as an instructor because for a short period of time, for 18 months of my life, I was doing this Aston Martin job. So we were doing this driving club. And he was one of our most trusted instructors. And I didn't
Yeah,
really know Paul that well until that. And but what a solid fella he is.
yeah.
Really, really solid fella. But he's not on social media, or from what I remember, he wasn't on social media. So I messaged him. I said, I've just heard this story about you did this something with your mum's car. Tell us about it. And that's when he sent me the video. It was amazing.
You know, that to me, there was a Rob, somebody from Superbikes, Rob McCallner, I think, was doing it in Superbikes, and I just thought, you know what, we're all at home. Let's see if I can get some momentum and get something going here. And I
Mm.
had a few embarrassing stories of what the family got up to. Me dad getting to Rowra and accidentally drinking a bottle of what he thought was Tango that happened that wasn't Tango. It was my brother's pee because he refused to stop to go to the toilet on the way up to come. So and it was just Mike O'Neill got involved, Biff got involved, Chris Cox got involved,
Chris, yeah.
Nicky Richardson,
Yeah,
you
Nikki.
got
I've got to have
involved.
Nikki on. I'd love to have Nikki on because I just
Yeah,
remember him, and I've said this before and said it time again. It's like he was the best cadet karter I ever saw. Like I
yeah.
just remember so clearly. He was obviously he stood out with the Villeneuve starter helmet, and he was just quick.
I think he started racing when he was 2.
Really, probably did. He still
No,
looks the same now.
if you get Nicky
The
on,
old bins. He had bins like this, didn't he?
I think if Nicky's a legend, if you get Nicky on, I think you've got to get Carla on, you've got to get Anne on, you've got to get Ali on, and you've got to get the whole group on because they were
Is that the
just
whole clan?
oh,
Well, I remember his
I,
mum. Go on,
fucking
Nicky. Go
fucking
on,
hell, Nick.
Nicky. Have him, Nicky.
I'm still in touch with Ali a little bit and Carla on Facebook and Nicky now and then, and just happy times, happy times. You say about instructing, Danny. I'm going to share with you a story that you probably won't even remember, you won't know that you were involved in. So
Wow.
I instructed a little bit at Silverstone just because that's what people were doing. I was never into it, never interested, but was just kind of almost like, well, maybe I should do a bit of instructing. And do you remember when the Audi TTs, they got the Audi TT cars?
Yeah. Yeah. They were the V6s, 2.8, I think.
You
Yeah.
got it.
Hmm.
So I was instructing in the Audis because I hardly used to do any days. I used to get, oh yeah, you can instruct in the Audis. You were instructing in a Ferrari.
Right.
Did the morning session, and then we used to go into the infield, I think, to the CAF or whatever to get lunch maybe. And there was the bridge by the old first corner. You go under the track, don't you?
Yeah.
I've no filling up with fuel. So I filled up with fuel. I've gone and got some lunch or whatever. I've then come back from lunch, gone to the bridge, drove under the bridge. At the same time, you're coming through the bridge, and it was only a one way. You couldn't pass. It
Yeah.
was
No.
so
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, and you've come 2/3 of the way through. So you're like you're going to have to reverse. So I was like, yeah, no worries. And I don't know whether you remember, the middle used to have a metal barrier and then the metal barrier stopped. So I'm reversing, looking in my mirrors and reversing, and I saw the metal barrier stopped, and I swung over to let you by. But what I didn't know is there's about a foot and a half of concrete after where the metal barriers stopped, and I took the side seal out of a brand new Audi TT at
Did
at
you?
the training school just to
Did
let you
you?
through. Yeah. So
No. I can't even remember that. Did I just disappear then?
you're just like, yeah, cheers, mate. Off you go. And I thought I shit myself, and I thought I've got to go and fess up now. So I
Did
drove
you?
straight back to the training
What can I
school.
blame it on? What can I blame it on?
Yeah, run
Who
out of
can I
talent.
blame it on?
So I went straight up to Steve Deeks and said, Steve, I've got a problem. You need to come and have a look at this. And literally, the side seal of a brand new Audi TT was just completely taken out.
Yeah. Well, it just happens on events. It doesn't matter where you are, what circuit, what venue. You get stuff like that happens, and that's funny. So that would have been early noughties, I'm guessing, something like that. Did
Yeah,
you
that.
Go on. It was, yeah,
No, yeah,
was
yeah,
it
not yeah. 2001, 2002 ish, maybe three. Yeah.
when Danny Watts was there?
Yeah, Watsy was there. Paul Munn was doing a bit.
Paul Munn, yeah.
Bath was there. Mosley was there. You were obviously there. Deeks, Stevie Deeks was there. Um, so yeah, Steph was there. I think Steph might have been doing a bit there. Steph Hodgetts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I hated it. I really did not like doing it. I don't know. I was just probably at a bit of a loss. Don't know why I even did it. But yeah, there you go.
Did you work at the karting hangar? Because what
Nah,
is now the Silverstone Museum, that was a kart circuit
I
for a
remember
period of
it,
time.
but I never worked there.
Because Danny Watts did most of it was between Danny and Paul Munn.
Paul Munn, yeah. What
They were
a pair
mostly
of
running it.
legends. They'll have some stories. Those two, you know, I got a lot of time, a hell of a lot of time for both of those. Great guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Both quick pedalers as well.
Yeah. Quick. Well, yeah, quick on the road as well at that time, probably. Not only trying to take corners flat on the racetrack, they're probably trying to take corners flat in their cars.
Mate, the stories with Danny, I'll be interested to see. Like, now, Danny, where do we start? Which story do we start on? I'm so looking forward because obviously his lad's racing now. He's got the same coloured helmet,
Has he?
same stripes. Because he ended up
Patrese, but yellow and blue.
correct, yeah, yellow and blue after his after Oxford United, big Oxford United fan.
Yes.
So whenever we speak on WhatsApp, like, it's like, how's Oxford doing? Or Oxford are just about staying up in the championship at the moment because they got promoted last year to the championship, and they
Love
just because
it.
my old man has died in the will, Oxford United
Oh wow.
fan, so I kind of got indoctrinated. Yeah, sort of back end of lockdown. I've seen 3 Oxford United matches in my life, and they've either won or drawn. So
Bloody hell.
I'm kind of like a lucky mascot. But yeah, no, Danny's big Oxford
Yeah, he
fan.
helped me
Yeah,
out. He helped me out. I did a bit of I got asked to do some scholarship F3 races with a team that had never even turned a wheel in scholarship F3. They'd never even done anything, and I was on the phone to Watsy a couple of nights, but you know, I only got asked the week before, and it was all not happening. You know, I had one set of tyres for the weekend where Menu Motorsport was sticking on a set, you know, a couple of tyres a day. We only had one
I'm
for the
going to try and
weekend.
find that. Going to try and find that
Yeah,
picture. Can you
Cadtech, that's
see that
it.
on there?
Planet Motorsport. So yeah, they were just they didn't really do anything, and they were just like, we're going to do F3. Will you drive it for us? And there never any money changed hands. There was never any discussion about what would happen if I shunted it, if we even had insurance or whatever. No testing, just rock up and go. And I remember being on
Yeah.
the phone to Watsy going, Danny, mate, I need some help. Like, can you just tell me what gears I should be in on what corners? Because we had no testing, no nothing. And we
Is
come away with,
that looks like it's at Silverstone, is it?
yeah, that'll be
On the
Silverstone.
Is it on the old international circuit that
Yeah, it'll be the old international circuit, and
coming
we
out the
did
hairpin?
6 races and got 3 podiums in the scholarship class. It
Oh,
was the
cool, man.
same year that James Winslow did it, but I remember the first start I ever did. I said to my mechanic, Paul Heath, I was like, Paul, we haven't done a start yet. What do I do? And he was like, you just need to hold it at this amount of revs, and then you'll figure the rest of it out. Anyway, I was starting second or third in scholarship. I got a blinder of a start and was leading scholarship and got amongst the A class guys. And as soon as I got to Hanger Straight, they were just like, "Zoom, zoom, zoom, zoom."
Is that because
But
they had a restrictor on? You had a
they were
restrictor
just,
on.
I don't know, we were just the engine. I don't know what engine we had in, but it just wasn't fast anyway. But I
Looks
was
like a
like,
Mugen from
yeah, it was
that.
the old Mugen engines, but it wasn't
Yeah.
that, it wasn't that
Whoever tuned
rapid.
it.
Yeah, it wasn't that rapid. And I remember making such a good start that I shit myself, like, oh shit, what do I do now? So yeah, good times, and you know, so I did a bit of scholarship F3 and didn't spend a penny. So you know,
Nice.
the Planet guys kind of sorted us out then, but God knows what had happened if we had a bit of a shunt. We'd have probably sorted that problem out at the
Yeah.
time. Bit scary now.
But you started in cadets then?
Yeah, so when I started racing BMX when I was 3 years old. Um,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, raced BMX for years, and then got to karting. I didn't start karting when I was 9. Raced a little bit and did the kart meeting that was at Silverstone for the kart Grand Prix.
Mm.
I was one of the only people on a zip because my dad used to work for Jack Barlow, and Jack Barlow, Barlotti Karts, was always
Right.
saying how he was going to make me a kart.
Right.
Don't worry, I'll make Lars a kart, and never did. Martin
Right.
Hines was Jack Barlow's biggest rival, so my dad thought, fuck you, Jack, you're never making this kart. Went out and brought a zip kart. Nobody was on zip at the time. In fact, it was only me and Dougie Bell were on zips. David
Ducky
Coulthard
Bell.
had just yeah, David Coulthard had just left the zip team.
Right.
And then I come in, and then Martin watched me at the Silverstone Kart Grand Prix and said, "Look, I want to help you out." And we kind of ended up as a work zip Young Guns driver for
That's it.
a lot of years. So with Anthony, teammates with Ant Davidson. So it's me and Ant really doing all the
Yeah.
development testing work for when Martin's son Luke got into karting. Obviously a few years behind, but yeah, Gary Paffett, Ant Davidson, myself, Barry Wilkin. Yeah, you name it. And we raced against Robbie Kerr in TKM, another guy you'd know.
Yeah. I remember Robbie well. Yeah. He used
Yeah.
to slap my uncle's head. Oh, he
Fucking
slap it.
cheeky,
He was a cheeky little bastard.
cheeky
As a
little kid.
kid, he
Great,
was.
great guy now though. I saw him
Yeah.
at one of the F3 meetings. Lovely, lovely bloke. But yeah,
What's
that
he
that
doing with
bottom
himself
left.
now? Is he coaching? What's he up to?
Yeah, he's coaching. He does a lot of driver coaching. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think he actually was involved with doing some coaching with George Russell years ago.
Okay.
But when I saw him, he was like the driver representative for GB3.
Right. Okay.
So
What
working
sort of
for
like driving standards you mean?
yeah, driving standards. So he was sharing that with Rob Jenkinson and then doing a bit of driver coaching as well.
Right. That would
But
make sense.
lovely, grounded, down to earth. Yeah, real nice, great guy as most of them are.
Yeah. No, I obviously remember him very well, and yeah, when he did A1 GP, and yeah, he did look. Well, I remember when he won the F3 championship because
Yeah,
he didn't even make the top. I remember speaking to his old man about this, like the after he'd won the F3 championship, he didn't even make the top 10 expected championship contenders for the
wow,
previous year, and then he went
wow.
and he won it ahead of. It what might have been Weber, or maybe Weber was earlier, but it was one of
Nah,
the
he'd have been
really
earlier.
fancied, like big
Wow.
budget, big name teams, and he was with, I think he was with
Alan
Alan
Docking.
Docking or
Alan
yeah,
Docking. Yeah, he was Alan Docking. Yeah, yeah. His
yeah,
career really come alive. Really come alive then. I think after that F3 thing. Yeah, good peddler, fantastic peddler. He'd make a fantastic F1 sim tester for somebody, I'm sure.
yeah. No, he's a top lad.
Well,
Right,
but
just looking
that
at so I've looked at this picture in particular, David Hodkin. Now, when I started in TKM, David Hodkin was the number one plate, and he used to wear, it was like a bandana. It was like his helmet design was like a bandana that was tied. That was the style. Obviously, it wasn't it?
love
It was
it.
a spray painted design with the number one plate. But I remember when he came to Shennington, it's like, wow, the British champion's here. And then a few months later, having a race and actually beating him in a heat. And literally, my life was made at that point. I've beaten the national champion in a heat. And I was like, I think I even like mentioned it in the Banbury Guardian as a big thing.
Love it.
I've beaten,
See,
yeah.
great
He must
enthusiasm,
have
man,
been
mate.
from Clay. So I remember him at Clay Pigeon, and that was the first time I learned about wet lines was from
Mm,
David Hodkin, because I remember watching him. It was a Super One qualifier, and he was just like taking some really unconventional lines in the wet, and like 2 seconds faster than anyone. I was like, oh, he's doing something different. What's that?
yeah.
And he's obviously
Do,
staying
do,
off all the.
do you remember in senior TKM there was a guy that never had a mechanic, so he had his stopwatch on the steering wheel, and he used to time. He used to stop it.
I
Time
know who that
himself.
is.
Who was
That
it?
is number 48.
Not Glenn somebody or no?
No,
He
he used
raced
to
with Doc
wear
Martens. He wore Doc
Doc Martens.
Martens.
I was just about to say he used to wear Doc Martens. Jimmy Haycraft. That's who that
Yes,
was.
wow.
Jimmy Haycraft. Yeah, Jimmy Haycraft, I think, is a respectable businessman now. From what I actually LinkedIn, I searched a link to try and find Jimmy Haycraft, and he came up, and he was some kind of he was a looked like a blue chip company owner
Wow.
with Jimmy
Yeah, he
Haycroft.
just
But
used to
yeah,
rock up on his own,
yeah,
time himself, but wear these
yeah.
big, Christ, the weight that must have put on the front of the car, just his Doc Martens.
And
His
his
every load of
stopwatch.
front end.
I remember
Hey.
him going off at Wombwell in front of us. This would have been a Super One qualifier, and he had a massive shot right in front of me. Wombwell, on the very last corner before the start finish line, he just went off right in front of me and just went straight into a pylon. I was like, that's a big shot. Doc Martin saved him.
Yeah, bloody hell, great times.
Mate, I love this. Let me share this back one again. This photo, which is hang on, let me put it on. Um, so bottom left, beating Jensen.
Yeah, so that was the only time I beat Jensen in a British. So that was the British Championship round at Butmore Park. Now there was around that time. That was when there was a load of cheating going around of people putting dodgy fuel down. So they'd have a fuel line and then a filter. So they used to blow a load of dodgy high octane fuel into the filter into the fuel line.
Right.
So to try and stop that or prevent that happening, we used to have to go out. I qualified. I had a great day. It was wet, and obviously wet's a great leveler. I never used to do any testing. I was just on it that day, and I won. I won two heats and finished third in the third heat. Put me pole for the final. So to try and stop people cheating with the fuel, we used to start off from the grid, do 2 laps, stop on the track, lift the fuel cap off, and whatever. I'm not sure
Yeah,
it
I
did
vaguely
much.
remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so then the pushers had to come onto the track to push you off. Anyway, David Catt was there helping push the cart because my dad couldn't do it on his own. And we're waiting there for 5 minutes till we put the fuel back on and start again. So I'm on pole, Jensen's on second. Catty looks down and he sees the rear of my cart's got a crack in it on the rear axle, on the hanger, the rear hangers. And
Right.
he said to my dad, he goes, Brian, the fucking chassis cracked. And he was like, shh, don't tell him. So I
Yeah.
did I won that final from start to finish with a cracked chassis.
No
Um,
way.
but racing Jensen was brilliant. He was hard. He was fair. I had a lot of close races with him, and I don't think we hit each other once. Funny story, Danny, with Jensen. So we were racing at the Midland Championships, and it was still in cadets, I think. So racing at the Midland Championships might have been junior TKM. And we practiced on the Saturday, and he said to me, he said, Lars, where are you staying tonight? And I said, well, staying where I always stay, gents. I'm sleeping in the van, next to the carts, with my mum and dad, on a mattress in the floor of the van. And he went, well, he said, we're staying at an Airbnb. And he said, there's nobody else there. It's boring. Do you want to come to the Airbnb and we can just like play footy in the evening? And I was like, wow, I'll go and ask my mum and dad. You go and ask your old man. Anyway, yep, it's all fine. So we drove in the old rocket transporter, drove
Yeah,
to this
black van,
that's
wasn't it?
it, the black
Yeah, yeah.
van. We drove to this B&B. John Button gets out with his bags and everything. Jensen gets his bags. I get my bags. We go in, see the lady, and she said, yeah, you're upstairs or whatever on the right. So we go up to the room. John opens the door. Me and Jensen are behind him. So John Button opens the door and he looks in and there's one double bed and one single bed. And we're like 9 and 10 at the time, so it's like, ooh. Anyway, John looks at us and he said, right, I'm taking the single bed. You two can have the double bed. And we looked at each other and went, but no, I'm not sleeping with you. So then we went. We must have gone to find nearly every cushion in that B&B, and we lined the middle of this double bed with cushions, and then
And you
slept. But
slept
yeah,
with Jensen Button.
yeah, in the same bed. Yeah, bloody hell. So at Rissington, but yeah, we lined the middle of the bed because we were like, oh, don't touch me. But great, John Button, Jensen Button, fantastic. Yeah, really, really lovely times. Great people. Sad that obviously John's not with us anymore as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, I never knew him. My old man knew him to kind of speak to because he was on the pit wall at well on the stands at Shennington, and it sort of obviously Jensen was doing his thing and my old man was doing his thing. Here's another quite a funny story. You'll like this one. So 90, what would it have been? 90, end of 97. So I was doing Vauxhall Junior and we were running it with a family run team. My old man had a garage and he was struggling financially at the end of that year.
Tough, right? So
And
tough, right?
yeah, it was expensive and yeah, it was, yeah, we were absolutely, shoestring racing against like some sort of big budget teams, like Donnelly's with talking pages. And anyway, so we got to the end of the year and I'd run out of money. I'd got no money and I managed to get together a couple of grand that was helped by a guy who used to work for Jordan Grand Prix called Paul Jordan. Funnily enough, he was on the Formula for Success podcast and he lived in our village in Hook Norton. And I knocked on his door and said, can you help us out with, finding sponsors? Because I knew he was a sponsorship guy and he was no relation to Eddie Jordan. His surname was the same. And anyway, so he managed to find us a couple of grand from one of his contacts.
Wow.
And with that couple of grand, I gave it to Ray Rowan Racing, and I tested a Formula Vauxhall Senior, the 2 litre, the whatever they
Yeah.
were, red top things with slicks and wings. And it was the first time I'd run with a professional team. And the test went really well. I was literally a tenth away from Wagner Ebrahim, who had just won the European, whatever, I think it was like not Race of Champions, it was a European race. I was literally a tenth away from who the lad had put it on pole position like the previous weekend. But that was the same day when Jenson Button had his first car test in, I think it would have been a Mégane, in Formula Ford. And my old man was stood on the pit wall watching me in this Formula Vauxhall. And John came on the pit wall, stood next to my old man, having a chat with my old man. So my old man then spent about 20 minutes trying to convince John that motor racing is a big waste of money and be really careful. Don't do it because you're just going to spend all the money that you're going to have and you're going to lose your house and it's a waste of money. And really think twice before doing this, John.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a great story. And John would have obviously raced before anyway, so he did
Yeah.
autocross, didn't he? Or had a
I think it's
Beetle, I
Rallycross.
think.
Yeah.
Rallycross, yeah. No, just brilliant. I mean, I remember stories in cadets when John Button would say to my dad, Gents has got to win because we ain't got any money for fuel to get home, so he's got to win the 150 quid because I need to put diesel in the van,
That's a nice blackmail.
yeah, and he generally won. But I used to hang around with Jeremy Gumley
Mm.
quite a bit, quite a lot.
I know, Jazz. Yeah.
So again, great family, great guy. I used to go down to the farm, and our half term used to be a week different to the half term in Yeovil.
Okay.
So schools in Yeovil had their half term, and we were on our half term. So Jeremy's dad would be like, "Right, we're going to go down to Clay on Wednesday, test him." So I just went down with him, and who should be at school, but who was there going round and round and round? Jensen. So John would literally be sat on a tyre in the middle of the track, and Jensen would just be pounding round, pounding
Yeah.
round, pounding round. And we've all got opinions as we said at the beginning, but I'm a believer that if you've got commitment, if you've got desire, it's not really about people see natural talent. They think it's natural talent, but it's not. It's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of just pounding round, but pounding round with a desire to go faster, not just pounding round for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And God knows how many laps gents would have done round clay pigeon. Just
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah. Well, I was speaking to Matt Kelly. I speak to him. I don't know him that well. We've kind of
Yeah,
gone to
I don't
most.
either, but he's a bit of a doer in the industry, and he's done a lot. He's
Yeah.
been involved in at quite a decent level.
Especially when karting. But he says that Max, back in the days when they were doing the European karting, his old man would literally fill his fuel tank up and said, "Right, get out there and don't come back until the fuel tank's empty." And like they were hard, whatever kart it was, it must have been super sticky tires. He said they were hard to drive, and that kid would go round and round
Yeah,
and
yeah.
round, and
I'm,
there's no
I,
substitute for it.
no, I'm a believer that you could take anybody with a desire. You can take anybody with a desire to be a racing driver, and if you gave them that, they would be equally as good.
Mm.
And I look back. I've been I've been lucky enough recently to be. I got invited on a TV show in London, TRT World.
Yeah.
It was when Lewis signed for Ferrari. So um, the guy that is the head presenter used to come and film me when I used to race in France at La-Filiere.
Oh,
So he
okay. Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
the journalist that worked. Enda Brady, great guy. You know, he used to work for
Let
Meridian
me get that
TV.
picture up so if anyone's watching this on YouTube, they can actually see what La-Filiere
The
is. I think.
Renault
Here we
campus.
go.
Yeah, so there you go, Renault
Yeah.
campus. So I won a scholarship basically at Silverstone. So it was a 2 day trial at Silverstone. The judges were Andy Prio, Hunter, Jamie Hunter, who I
Jamie
knew.
Hunter, yeah.
I knew Jamie Hunter from BMX. So I've known Jamie Hunter
For
since I was about
BMX.
three, yeah, 3 years old. Jamie, I think, was a BMX British champion as well. Like
Right.
proper good, proper good.
Yeah.
And when I see Stephen now, I often say, Jamie was great to me, amazing guy, and he was with who was his wife at the time? Used to instruct as well at
Judith.
Silverstone.
Judith Forrow.
Yeah, lovely, lovely, lovely couple.
Yeah.
So sad, but I digress a little bit. So, yeah, it was a 2 day thing at Silverstone. Won the scholarship, and the scholarship was to everything paid, everything paid, food, accommodation, racing for a full season in France, living at Le Mans under the guidance of Henri Pescarolo.
Yeah, cool, man.
So where I was kind of going is I'm a believer, I said on that TV program because it was about Lewis signing for Ferrari, so I was kind of like, with my background, what did I think? And it come to how difficult it is to get involved in motorsport. Then it went on to kind of like diversity and women in motorsport, and my comment was, look, if Mercedes put the same money into two female kart racers called Sophie Kumpfum and Lotte Hellberg, we would have had a very, very, very successful female Formula One racer by now.
Mm,
If just those two girls would have had that investment, and
mm.
about 4 weeks later, because Sophie Kumpfum obviously is Max Verstappen's mum.
Yeah.
And then about 4 weeks later, Max did an article and he said, if it wasn't for me old man, my mum would have made F1 as well.
Hmm.
So, I'm really passionate. It can be done, but I sometimes I look at the girls that are racing now. You look at female boxers and they are athletes. You look at female CrossFit athletes and they are hench, they are athletes. They're defined, and we just need, there must be a billionaire female businessman around that's prepared to put the money into one or two girls instead of not a series, because like La-Filiere was a series,
Yeah.
and you're spreading the money too thin. You've got to invest heavily in one or two, and yeah, I just hope I'm alive to see the day that happens, because I think it can happen.
Well, I think it will. So we've got Alicia Pawaskia. I think I was
Yeah,
correct in saying that
that's
Hodgix is.
Chris's protege.
Yeah. So she's been like right on it in the F1 Academy. The only when and great, I'd love to have her on here. Actually, I'm very conscious that I've had 100% males so far on this podcast. So, and given
She
that I've got a
races.
daughter who's actually doing karting, albeit
I
regionally,
hope she's giving you some shit, your daughter, for having too many guys on
she
here.
will do. Well, she generally does in my life, generally, but no more than her mum did. But anyway, that's a different story altogether. But yeah, no. Well, the only thing with the F1 Academy that I can't really correlate. I think it's great that they're giving girls a platform and they're promoting girls and that is cool. But in terms of a career path, in terms of preparing them for Formula One,
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
see that that's the best option
No,
because if you're going to
I agree.
prepare them for Formula One, you've got to compete against the best drivers, regardless of their sex, not
Totally
just
agree.
against the best girls.
Yeah,
If they
totally
really
agree.
going to it depends on what they're preparing them for, to me.
There's the argument. I think their argument is, and I don't know, is that there's this argument that to achieve it, you've got to be able to see it. So I don't believe by spending all these millions on offering 20 girls the opportunity to race F1 female academy, you're not really going to achieve anything. But what you will achieve is you'll create awareness, and younger girls will see those girls doing it and think, I can do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
but
can see
but
that.
so you look at the amount of boys that start motor racing to the amount of men that become Formula One drivers.
Hmm.
So the gene pool is like that,
Yeah.
and that gets through. So at the
Yeah.
moment, the female pool of motor racing drivers is like that. So what the F1 Academy series will do, hopefully, it girls will see that going on TV and go, "Oh, I can do that,"
Yeah.
and then the pool will get bigger. But you still, it doesn't matter how big that pool is. The only way to make F1 is to invest millions and millions and millions and all the people we've mentioned so far on tonight's podcast,
Yeah.
Jensen included, Jensen, Anthony, um, Lewis. They've had millions, not of their own money, but they've had millions spent on them before
Yeah.
they even make F1, and
Yeah.
that's what it needs for a female driver. It needs serious investment. Just fund loads of money, and it will happen. But yeah.
Yeah. It's about taking the one or two special ones
Yeah, and
to
Lotte Hellberg and Sophie Kumpfen were special. They were
mm,
winning European kart races against the guys. They were phenomenal.
yeah. Yeah. Well, back in the day, uh, uh, um, Toto's wife. Sorry, I'm getting mental blank.
I raced Susie Stoddart.
Susie.
I
Susie
raced
Stoddart.
Susie in Formula A. Great
Yeah.
driver. Great driver.
Yeah.
Um, real good pedaler. And they used to travel from Oban in
Yeah. Yeah.
Scotland.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize how far Auburn was away
Yeah.
until I met someone from Auburn. I was like, it's like proper northwest coast of Scotland. It's a good old trek that is.
And they were doing that nearly every weekend in I think an Iveco, a big Iveco van or a big Mercedes van. The whole family, the mum, the dad, Susie.
Yeah.
But again, I just think even yeah, it needs. I think now you look at CrossFit athletes, you look at female boxers, and I think they're just moving that level of of fitness, of attitude, of focus, and I think that the girls involved in motorsport almost need to be looking at those kind of athletes and going,
Yeah.
shit, if I'm serious about this and I want to do it, I've got to train and be a
Yeah.
similar physique to the guys that are racing, and that is possible. It is
Yeah, it
possible.
is. It is. Well, nowadays it's easier than it was in the 90s because in the 90s, like pre-power steering, those things were absolute animals to hold on to. I mean, I mean, I'm talking like I'm an expert, but I just from what I've heard
Yeah,
that they've got
yeah,
power steering. They're easier cars
yeah. I agree.
to drive, although they're still going to have G-force, and you've still got to hold your helmet up through a high-speed corner. But there's absolutely no reason physically that women can't
But
race up
Danny,
to that level.
I go to CrossFit three times a week, right? And they have in CrossFit they have an RX, which is if you're going to do the workout properly, that it's the male RX and the female RX. So it's as written, the male weight that you've got to lift and the female weight that you've got to lift.
Yeah.
I I'm happy if I get close to the female weight, and
Amazing.
I train. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sat on
Talking
my
about
ass.
female,
I train.
I've just been given a coffee. Sorry.
Oh, look at you being looked after.
She doesn't want to appear on camera.
So yeah,
Feels like.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
if I get close to the female weight. So my point is again, like, there's girls lifting some heavy shit in CrossFit,
Hmm.
phenomenal athletes, and I see them lifting the bar, and I don't really see girls in motorsport going to the extent of girls in other sports at the moment with regards to
Mm.
really pushing boundaries.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's going to take a real alpha female to go and do that, I think.
yeah,
And
and
but it's
support somebody to support.
I think
Uh,
genuinely someone that's already been born will be getting
yeah,
into F1. Maybe it's Alicia. I hope it is. I mean, it's
Well,
and I'd
Chris is
like to
not.
see
He's
them.
not silly, is he? Chris is not silly. He knows his onions.
Yeah, yeah, he does. Yeah, and yeah, it's good that we've got the decent peddlers coming through, and I think they'll get good backing as well. Actually, I don't really subscribe to the whole business about we can't get sponsorship. I think sponsors would fall over themselves if they found a talented female, because what a sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah. Why is there not a female Lawrence Stroll? There must be a female Lawrence Stroll in this world.
Well,
Must be.
uh, to me, it's like it's it should be about ability. I mean, it should be a bonus the fact that they're female. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It should
Yeah.
be
Yeah. I
like
know. I
it's like,
agree.
how competent
It's
are
not.
they as a
It's not like tennis, is it? It's not like tennis where you've got male tennis. You know,
yeah.
the men's championship and the women's championship. Motorsport ain't like that. So
Hmm.
you've got to you all be on that level. I love it, and like I say, I hope I get to see it. I hope I get to see it before I'm gone.
I think we will, mate. I think we will.
Yeah, that'd be
But
good.
mate, come back to your we'll go back to the karting. Um uh let's have a look, see what we've got here. So this is junior TKM. Hang on. No, this is junior
Oh
TKM. Is that
yeah,
your
there's my
dad?
dad. Yeah, that's my dad. Bless him. So Martin Hines made these overalls for the Zip Young Guns team, and that was Mick Wilkin was running the Zip team then at that time. Um, yeah, my dad always, it was always a joke that he had to get an extra large pair of overalls for him. But Martin Hines was really doing it properly. You know, proper team. We had a Mercedes truck. You know, like I say, teammates with Ant Davidson,
Hmm.
Nelson Rowe. Nelson Rowe was racing at that time as well.
Is that
Yeah,
this
that was
thing that you've got?
no, that was a truck. So we 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 made a funny story about it. So we made a truck. So my mum used to work for a transport company, and they were selling off the trucks, and we couldn't afford to race anyway. We could never really afford to race. Um, and we converted that from just a courier van, empty courier van, into our motorhome. And we used to. That was when I was in Formula A, and we used to go
Formula
around.
A.
Some of the Yeah, I won the British Open Formula A Championship while we were in
There you
that, and
go.
that yeah, that's it, the O Plate. That was one of the happiest times of our lives, I think, going away as a family in that van, no mobile phones. No worries. No, apart from the old man going mental if we didn't go well, and there'd be spanners flying through the awning at head height or something. And but he made it all possible. Bless him. But do you do you remember, Danny? I digress a little bit now, but this is how good karting used to be. You could walk around a karting paddock back in the day, and I don't reckon 50% of the trucks would have tax discs on them.
Yeah. You'd be lucky if you had any trucks at all. I think it was only a Heinzie and a couple, and maybe Paul Carr with his old scrapper, and it would all be like. I remember there was a lad called Kent Sekban. Do you remember Kent Sekban?
No,
And he used to
no.
arrive with a he had a Mark II Golf, and he used to chuck the cart in the back of the Mark II Golf. It wasn't a Golf Estate; it was just a normal Golf. He used to chuck it in, and it was like it was a bedstead. There was a couple of characters, and he was an absolute lunatic. Funny user. He was quite an intelligent fella, but absolute lunatic on the track. And another guy called, can you remember Kevin Rowland? Number
Yes, the
14
name
plate.
does ring a bell. Yeah,
He used to have
yeah.
my uncle used to call it a bedstead, that fucking bedstead that he's on. And he used to like, I literally, the thing was just like covered in oil and all sorts of crap. But again, he was quite quick, but he would be like the assassin. If he was like ninja level of assassination. He'd be able. He said, and I remember my old man telling me. So I just had a word with Kevin. He said, if you want to know how to take someone out, he'll tell you how to take someone out. You've got to wait until they're really committed on the brakes and just be a little bit more committed. So you just give them that tap.
Love it. I
It was
love it.
fucking
But
bedstead.
we used to walk around the paddock, and there'd be like, proper drivers that they're spending all the money on karting. And they couldn't have, the tax disc is probably like 6 months overdue. I used to thought it was brilliant. It's great. Another guy, sadly, is not here. Danny Weldon. I remember I was going myself, Wesley Barber, Reg Barber. We went to pick Danny Weldon up to go to the kart Super Prix at Silverstone.
Hmm.
Picked him up. and old Danny, his dad was mowing the lawn. Clive Weldon was mowing the lawn. So Danny winds the old window down and goes, Dad, don't forget to choke it at the end of the straight. And then Clive just turned around. Cheeky Danny, great character.
How fast, this is what I've been trying to tell my daughter, how fast were Junior Britain when they went with a super sticky,
Oh my
what
gosh.
was the name of the tyres when they went super sticky? They went from like
Bridgestone YEQs, I think.
YEQs, because they were like a Formula A tyre, weren't they, in
So
terms of stickiness?
yeah, so Bridgestones before then used to be on the YBNs.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
and, and I, t I told the story in one of my podcasts. Terry Fullerton was running a guy called Tommy Field at the British Championships on a Fullerton kart. And
Mm-hmm.
it was at Clay Pigeon and it was dry. It was bone dry. And you know at Clay Pigeon sometimes the mist can come in and it was a little bit misty, but the track was bone dry. And the mist was coming in and they declared it an open meeting. And the slicks were YBNs and the wets, I don't know what they were. Terry put Tommy Field on wets on about 8 to 9 psi in the tyres, and everybody else, Darren Gibbs and everybody else, stayed on the slicks. Tommy Field nearly lapped everybody in the final in the
Really?
dry on the wets because the slicks were so rock hard. So
Right.
from that, they then went to like the YEQs, I think, which were the super sticky. But
Yeah.
Danny and Jensen, when they were racing Junior Britain, they were probably faster than the seniors.
That's what I remember. I just remember. So I broke
Lethal.
down going into so Shenny start finish line left through into is it
Yeah,
Stratford, and then the sort of like it was almost a 180 right, wasn't it? And then
yeah.
left past the
Chicane on the way back.
grandstands and then down into that first hairpin. But I remember I broke down, so something happened, chain come off or carburetor, and the next practice session came out, and I'm sort of trapped on the inside island on the tyres, dragged my car onto the tyres on the inside, and seeing those Junior Britons for a practice session from the inside is like, holy crap, they are fast because they were
Big
doing in
wide
excess of
rims.
100 miles an hour, weren't they?
Yeah. And lethal. The Reed engine. They had Reed engines.
That's right, yeah.
Like like
Most powerful
single.
engines,
Yeah,
sticky tyres, no
yeah.
weight.
So quick. No side pods as well. Just metal bars.
That's
And
right, yeah.
I'm really saddened. Like I say, I love karting. It's a real passion, but I'm really saddened by what it's become in some ways. So if you've got kids that are racing, if you were starting karting now, you wouldn't have a clue what class to do. You would not have a clue. Whereas when we were racing, there was cadets,
Yep,
junior Britain. This is before
yep,
TKM, but there was cadets, junior Britain, senior Britain, national, Formula A.
yep,
And if you were
yep,
starting karting and you were that age group, you got into cadets. If you were a bit
yep.
older, you went junior Britain. Now, you just diluted the whole competition field, and it's
Yeah,
so
my daughter's
diluted.
doing junior pro karts, and she said they're so heavy to drive, and she's testing it. She's racing this weekend at Teesside, and she said she's not tried it with the full weight, and she's obviously the same as me. I mean, she's racing against like 14-year-old lads, and she's a 13-year-old skinny girl,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
she's got to run 20, 30 odd kilos of weight in a pro kart. It's like that's going to be hard work, but it will toughen them
Yeah.
up. I mean, it's an object,
Yeah.
and you make that object go fast. And there's people that have come out of pro karts, like Rob Garofalo, who I had on the podcast a few months ago. He came out of pro karts because that's all he could afford to do, and frankly, that's all that the ex can afford for my daughter to do, I
Oh,
suppose.
Rick Parfitt Jr., Tom Gaymore.
Hmm.
They all came from pro karts.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with it. You're batting round, as long as you're batting round with intent, not just batting round.
Yeah.
It's all. It doesn't matter what you do. It's all good. And for me personally, while we're talking about that sort of thing, you look at Formula One now, and you look at, I know Lewis is not really a massive fan about sim racing,
Hmm.
but you look at Max and you look at Lando Norris, and they're on it all the time. And
Yeah.
there's just no, whether they're racing the real thing or they're racing a simulator, you can't catch up if
Yeah.
somebody's doing something that much.
Yeah, it's become almost like the modern equivalent of karting, and I think that so Max is of the generation where he's come through the karting ranks, and he's morphed into doing the sim racing stuff, and that's mainly what he does. But he's done the both. I suspect
Yeah.
in where's it going to be in 20 years or even 10 years from now? There's not going to be the karting. It'll just be sim racing. I suspect that's
Yeah.
where it's
Well,
heading. It'll just be sim racing in straight into real cars.
I'm aware of I'm aware of people that are fairly successful kart racers that can't afford to go kart racing, so they've bought their son, daughter, or whatever a sim,
Yeah,
and you can't blame them. Why, why not? Just I
yeah.
know it's not.
Spend
I know
two or
it's
three
not.
grand on a decent sim.
Yeah, and go compete, and try and make a career out of that. Why not?
Mm.
You know,
Well,
for
hopefully, I think there isn't a substitute for you know karting and the physical. Currently, the physical thing is just as important, just as important.
yeah,
Look at these bunch of
yeah.
reprobates here.
So that is from left to right. That is Gary Paffett,
Yeah,
Luke Hines,
yeah.
myself. You can see. Well, you can see what a disadvantage I was at. Look how much taller I am than.
Are you the
Okay,
same
Gary
age as
and
these other lot?
no, I'm the same age as Ant. Ant was always tiny, bless him.
Right, yeah.
So Wes Barber probably 2 years younger than me.
Wes.
Luke probably 3 years younger than me, and Gary's probably 2 or 3 years younger than me. They might be a bit younger than that, but yeah. So left to right, Gary Paffett, Luke Hines, myself, Wesley Barber, and then Ant
Ant
Davidson.
Davison,
And
yeah.
he's a lovely. Again, talk about good, nice people. I haven't seen him for a while, but what a really, really nice guy. And another digressing a little bit, Danny, but it's quite a cool story. And it's relative to people being nice guys. So obviously, Lewis, when he was younger, was kind of on the periphery of the Zip team. He was kind of not part of the main team, but was still a part of it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I obviously used to know him. I wouldn't say know him well, but he was part of the team. So I used to talk to Tony Hamilton and Lewis a lot. And when we'd be at Zips, Lewis would be there, and he'd be like, "Oh, I like your helmet," because my helmet was fluorescent yellow.
Mm.
And I he then got the Mercedes sponsorship, and you watch him on TV, and you're a little bit like, oh, lucky bugger, lucky bugger. And then he's racing F2, then he makes F1, and as a couch observer, I'm looking at it going, oh, he's changed. Oh, he's not that, he's not. Oh, he's changed. And when I stopped racing, my dad just did not know what to do with himself. So he used to race radio control cars.
Yeah,
And
right.
I stupidly said one Christmas, "Do you know what, Dad? If it's a wet winter, I wouldn't mind building an RC car up." Anyway, next thing, Christmas comes, he's bought me a nitro RC car with all the kit, and he's like, "When we going racing then, Lars? When we going racing?" So we started racing radio control cars with Damien Tigwell. You remember
Ah,
that?
Damon
So
Tigwell. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
um,
he did senior TKM.
that's it. You got it.
Hmm.
Digress a little bit. So anyway, we were racing at Slough, and obviously Lewis's brother with cerebral palsy couldn't drive at that time, but he was a very good remote control racer.
Right,
So I then used to race with Nicholas Hamilton. Now
right.
one day Lewis turned up to race, and bearing in mind he just won his second world championship around about this sort of time,
Mm.
and he turned up at Slough, and do you know what? as far as I was concerned, I was chatting to the exact same kid that used to race karts when he was 9 and 10.
Right.
Had not changed a bit. And I
Okay.
had I had about a 15-20 minute conversation with him, and they said to him, "Look, Lewis, because of who you are, in radio control car racing, you do your race, and you have to go and marshal the next race." And they
Right.
said to him, look, you don't have to marshal the next race. He was like, no, no, no. If that's what I've got to do, that's what I've got to do. So he was out in the middle of the track, turning cars up the right way and getting it done, chatting to everybody. Sadly, word got around by lunchtime and shitloads of people turned up. But
Yeah.
it's a lovely story to share with you and anybody that might be listening, because sometimes when people become global superstars, especially these days with bloody mobile phones, everybody's paparazzi. So as soon as you step out your front door, you're kind of constantly aware that somebody's ready to take a picture. Hand on
Mm.
heart, what a lovely chat I had with him, and he had not changed a bit. Talking about the old
Mm.
karting times, choking it at the end of the straight. Anthony, how his dad turned up, and honestly, obviously, they fly around the world in jets now, so life has changed. But lovely, lovely people who, yeah, were the same. So as far as I was concerned, exactly the same. Beautiful story.
That's good. That's good to hear that. I mean, I think it will depend a little bit in which environment he's in. He did come to
Hmm.
Silverstone once, and I won't name the names, but he didn't really pay much attention to the lad who he used to race against. But I don't know. You see, what you don't appreciate sometimes is that they might have other things that are going on of their that they have to focus on in the day, or they've got responsibilities, and you never really know, do you? You never really know
You
unless
don't
you
know.
find yourself in that position,
Yeah.
and you unless you're put in that position, because that's quite a from a from a lad from the slums in Stevenage. It wasn't quite it wasn't quite that. I mean, it's taken a little bit out of context, I think, but you know what I mean. It's like anyone from a normal background that doesn't come from a moneyed background,
Yeah.
it would be definitely a change of circumstance to go and
He's
take
in
on and suddenly have all that
He's in
attention
he's in an
given to you.
impossible situation, though, isn't he? He's in an impossible situation to please everybody.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, he's a global superstar. Probably feels like we digress a little bit, but probably feels like he's got a voice that he's got to make use of. But
Mm.
I just wanted to share with anybody that might be listening my experience of like
Yeah,
knowing him as a kid,
yeah.
being very jealous of him, obviously, when he got that Mercedes McLaren sponsorship, and then
Hmm.
not seeing him for years, and then seeing him probably 10 years later. Brilliant,
Yeah.
really down to earth chat, really nice.
Be nice to see him at a radio control car race, because that's where he started, wasn't it?
He was
Before the
good as well.
karting.
We were in the same final. We were in the B final. We never made it through to the A final, but me and him both qualified for the B final, and we were stood next to each other on the gantry. I think his brother even might have qualified just on the back of the A final. Nicholas was really good, really
Right.
really good. Yeah,
So
great
that was
times.
Nitro stuff, was it? What sort of year was
Yeah.
that?
That would have been so. It would have been after he won his second world championship, I think. So
Right. So it was like
probably,
2009, 2010, something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, around about that sort of time. But I
Go.
literally did it because my dad was at a complete loss, and then obviously you have to do pit stops. So you have to
Right.
pit for fuel in those things because
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you
With the
need two tanks of fuel to last a race. So you drive into the pits. And my old dad, bless him, his eyes was going at the time. So but he used to have a go at me for driving shit and then making mistakes. And then I'd come and pit, and he didn't know whether to put his glasses on, take his glasses off, lift the buggy off, put the fuel, and fucking send it, will ya? I'm losing. Just again, Danny, as we all started karting, dad and lad going
Yeah,
away, doing stuff. Dad and daughter, dad and lad, whatever it is. So important to just do things as a family and yeah, do stuff.
that's that. I want to get a few dad and lads on here, like Danny Watts. With that, I'd
Yeah,
absolutely love. I mean, well, Dan is separated from Fiona now, but
yeah.
it'd be great to get that second generation from people that we. Not that I never raced against Danny, but I just worked with him a lot, and did lots of jobs with him, and like what a fast peddler he was.
Oh, crazy! And his shunt that he had at Alton Park, like
Absolute fucking numbnut, but
Jesus.
no, I love him. I love Danny. He's an absolute legend. I'm so looking. Oh well, he said he'd do it. Actually, I must put him higher up the list to get him on here. But what did he have at Alton Park? Then was that an F3 shunt? Was it?
Fucking Formula Renault, like massive shunt, massive,
I can't
massive
remember that.
shunt. Yeah, go on YouTube and I think if you go on YouTube, put Danny Watts Alton Park shunt, like it was huge. And he walked away from it. How he walked away from it, I do not know.
Oh yes, no, no. Now you say of it, that was at Druids, wasn't it? That was
Yeah,
he attempted to fly a Formula Renault.
yeah. And he did
Yeah.
for a bit. He flew it for a bit. Just come to
I've
a
got a video,
stop.
or there's an old video just in the early days of camera phones of Danny Watts being lobbed Down the we had a two-tier porter cabin. I don't know if we were there at Silverstone. We had a two-tier porter cabin. Downstairs was where they kept all like the cones and a few bits and pieces, and upstairs was when we did the briefings. Danny Watts saying, "Hi, I'm Danny Watts, and this is Jackass," and him being lobbed into a load of chairs, just just like it was a game of skittles. It was just like,
He
yeah,
lived like he lived definitely back then. He lived life flat out. Then he just loved his racing. Loves his racing.
yeah,
Same with me.
and and
I don't really like cars, Danny. I'm not interested in cars, but I loved racing. I love that thought of either being last, being 24th, and know that you've got 23 people that you want to try and overtake, or leading and having 23 people chasing you. That's what I loved.
yeah, coming through the pack. It doesn't matter whether you're in a pro car or whether you're in,
No.
a car or
Yeah. The
whatever you're
hunter,
in.
the hunted, whatever.
Mate, let me show you. There's some other random things that you sent through, which I wanted to
I
talk
just
to you
sent
about.
through a
Oh,
load of.
you worked for Prodrive, didn't you?
I worked for Prodrive for 10
Yeah, I'd
years. Yeah.
forgotten that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to, when I was working for Zips to help pay for my racing, I was, David Richards' son, Jamie Richards, was racing Formula Yamaha.
Right.
Um, and I was mechanic. So I used to mechanic, for Jamie, and do a little bit of driver coaching for Jamie to help pay for my racing.
Hmm.
So I kind of met David Richards then. Said to David, look, I've done my apprenticeship at Atomic Weapons Establishment in engineering. Any chance of some work experience? And I did a week's work experience at Prodrive, and then it was really crazy. I won the La-Filiere Scholarship and got offered a job at Prodrive and Jordan F1 in the same week. And
Really?
I didn't like the atmosphere at Jordan F1 when I went to the factory. So I accepted the job at Prodrive, turned up on my first day and said to the director at the time, guy called Tony Butcher, I said, Tony, I can't work here. I've just won a scholarship to go and live and race in France for a year.
Right.
I can't accept the job. I've got to leave. And he said, Lars, I tell you what, you go away racing. There's a job here for you whenever you want it. If you want to come back in the summer, there's a job here for you for a month, for 2 months to earn some money for your racing. If your racing goes well, which I hope it does, I hope we don't see you, but there's always a job here for you. So they kept their word. And when I finished racing, I went back to Prodrive and yeah, worked at Prodrive in the manufacturing. And
I
it's,
I
I
remember
know.
hearing you doing that actually, and yeah.
Yeah, it's the hardest I've ever worked in my life. We were expected to work 80 hours a week plus in the winter for no overtime. You get paid a standard 38-hour week, and then come November, I remember saying to my boss, "Look, I've got a kart race or something. I'm going to need to get to bed early this week." Yeah, yeah, no problem, no problem. And then you'd be in the workshop till like midnight every night because that's what's required of you. In the machine shop, we were knocking in probably 70, 80 hours a week. But the guys on the car building the car, always everything gets left to the last minute. They'd be doing 100-hour weeks, not seeing their family flat out. But yeah, and then the picture there, again, it's quite an interesting story. I worked in manufacturing, and obviously they knew my racing background, so I ended up driving the soapbox, which was the picture you had up a minute ago. And then
Mm.
Darren Turner, again, great guy, Darren Turner, helped me out with a bit of advice when I was racing. I've known Darren from Blackbush days, since I
Right.
was about 9. When I started at Blackbush, Darren Turner was racing Junior Britain at Blackbush in the back of a transit van with his old man. Um, great couple of guys. So Darren Turner was obviously driving for Aston Martin,
Hmm.
and if they were to use Darren for shakedowns, it would count as one of his days working for Aston Martin throughout the year.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
So he'd be quite an expensive person to get to shake the cars down.
Yeah.
So they said to me, Lars, how would you like to test and shake down the cars and do some basic testing? I was like, yeah, sure. So 2 or 3 times a week, I was taken out of manufacturing. I left my crash helmet and all my kit there. and I'd be shaking down GT1, 2, 3, 4 Aston Martin cars, doing some. So we're doing some straight line testing at Myra. So
Hmm.
and again, people go, "Oh, that sounds amazing," but I'm a racer. I love racing. It was
Yeah, it's boring as
boring.
shite.
Oh
Yeah.
man, middle of August, it's
Yeah.
like 30 degrees. You've got your overalls on, you've got your crash helmet on. You're just driving down at Myra, miles straight, turn around on the banking, come back all day long. I'm sat in the car and going, Wilkes, can I go to the toilet? I need a wee. I need a wee. No, no, you can't. Not yet, mate. We need to just change something, and we need to do another test, and we don't want the wind to change. Yeah, but I'm gonna piss myself. I'm gonna piss, mate. You can't go to the toilet. So then you're there
Yeah.
going, shit, do I piss myself or do I hold it and then not let you
Yeah.
go to the toilet because they want
It's
to
like
do another
working in a
aero test?
production line in a factory, right?
Oh, mate, it's terrible. And anything, you get a headache at the end of the day. And I was just like, man, this is not racing. I didn't even enjoy it at the end, but it was a great experience. But one day I was there all day doing straight line testing. And do you know, like the pitot tubes at the front of the car that to measure the wind speed, little
Right.
pitot.
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So I'd done a day's testing, straight line testing. And basically I used to have to go out, get up to 60 kilometers, hold it at 60 kilometers for 100 meters, then accelerate up to 180k and hold it there as long as I can, so they could test obviously wind speed, drag, all the kind of aero stuff. And we'd go and test everything on the miles straight in the morning, and then go in the wind tunnel and try and replicate everything in the afternoon. So I used to have to do 3 laps at a time. So the last run of the day, they said, right, go out, do your 3 laps. So I've gone down, out the pits, down onto the mile straight, 60 kilometers. I've accelerated up to 180k. And as I've done that, this pigeon shit itself at the side of the the side of the mile long straight, took off, and I've speared it through the neck with the pitot tube on the front of the bonnet of the car. So, so you can see me just lift right off the throttle, going like shit. And I'm in the car. I've lifted off the throttle, going, fuck. What do I do now? And
Skewered
there's
a
and
pigeon.
there and there's this pigeon slowly dying on this pitot tube, and I thought, well, it's nearly dead now, isn't it? So, oh, I'll
What was
just
the wind
carry on.
speed showing?
I don't know. I just thought I'll carry on now and go in the pits anyway. So I got to the end of the straight, and you know they got the bank turn there.
Right.
So I'm going around the bank turn, and as I'm going around the bank turn, obviously the gravity's taking the centrifugal force is taking the pigeon off to one side, and I come back down the mile straight, and now the pitot tube's gone fully through its neck, and it's just flown back up the car and clattered the rear wing, massive rear wing on the Aston Martin. So I've pulled into the pits, and the mechanics are going, what the fucking hell is he doing? He should do 3 laps. You've only done one, and you literally see their faces. They're going like, "What are you doing?" And then literally, as the car gets closer, they just kind of go, and there's just blood and guts all over the car
And
over
the
the rear
window
wing.
gets shoved back. Roasted pigeon, anyone?
So yeah, great, great times. And I don't know if you ever know, some of those mechanics. I'm in. Sadly, we've lost a few of the mechanics from Prodrive now. Back in the day, Prodrive were the Man United of machine shops and Man United of race teams, and the talent that they had within that business. I mean, they're all either at Red Bull or Mercedes or Aston Martin now. There was so
Mm,
much talent going through there,
mm.
and grafters. We've lost a few, and there's a WhatsApp kind of. I won't share any details, but there's a WhatsApp chat group about all the memories. Now, if you could get somebody on your podcast from a race team back in the day, because Jesus Christ, those guys worked and they played just as hard as they worked, and
It,
they
it's
worked
it's
hard.
it's funny actually. It's interesting trying to get guests on the podcast that will actually come on and risk
They'd have
that
to be
because it's
anonymous.
well, yeah, it's kind of a bit like that. But do you know what? I have quite a few discussions about this with different people because it's the Overton window is moving. So it's and so what is the Overton window? The Overton window what is acceptable parlance, which eventually moves to what eventually becomes like government policy. Now, can you imagine doing this podcast 20 years ago and saying the sort of things that we will talk about now?
Yeah.
and you just wouldn't risk it, would you? I wouldn't
We'd be
risk it.
cancelled. We'd be cancelled in another 5 years. Don't
Well,
worry about that, Danny.
5 years ago, we would have been cancelled. But I think everyone's just like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, you've got that knobhead over in America, and he just says what the fuck he likes." And it's like, well, at least we're being reasonable with it. And I'm giving it a bit of thought when I'm going through it. I mean, it's a tricky one because, you're wanting to encourage people to come on and just be honest, but different people don't come on because of different reasons. I can't come
Yeah.
on because I'm representing this, or I'm doing this and I've got to be careful about that. I'm just like, but to be fair, I think because your reputation is everything in the industry, and I hope it's seen as this is banter. Okay, occasionally we might make a little bit of a trip and we'll apologize if we do that, but it's
Look, Danny.
part of life's rich tapestry. That's the way I look
Yeah,
at it
it's a
anyway.
lot of fun. It's people. It's authentic. It's people. Just get on with it. I just think that, The Office, the TV program The Office was phenomenal.
Yeah,
But I promise you, if we could have done the race team instead of like The Office, you did the race team.
yeah,
You could make so much money doing a proper, no holds barred. This is what goes on in a race team, and make it kind of like a TV comedy thing, like The Office. There'd be people being blown up. There'd be pranks being played on people.
yeah,
It would just be that race team environment with the
yeah.
characters that you get. The people you work with. I know the instructors back in the day. You probably can't talk about some of the stuff that's gone on until you've probably retired and your careers are
Well, I
over.
need to get Danny Watts on to just basically just talk about a year of Danny Watts, and anyone will come on after that. Anyone wants to just talked about flag marshalling naked at Stoke on the Stoke circuit. It's like whatever, but it's like
Have you
I
seen my new
hope I.
shoes?
I hope I just hope that if anyone's watching this that is of sort of higher authorities knows that it's in jest and it's in banter, and it's not meant to, because ultimately despite all of those stories we actually did do a good job, and
Yeah,
we were very good with the customers, and we were very
yeah.
professional on the track, and we're very competent on what we did. And it was, I mean, when you look at Silverstone, it was really, to me, that Silverstone and Thruxton actually were like the two centers of excellence actually. And
Yeah.
then but you had obviously Brands Hatch and Alton, and each place had their own thing, but it was where it collected like the best
Well,
people.
you work hard, play hard, and going back to like the Prodrive days, like Jesus Christ, those guys, it's like an army. They created, like it was like an army. Like if one of them was staying late, they're all staying late.
Right.
And if somebody turns up that's not prepared to stay till midnight, he didn't stay very long. But if one of them was staying till midnight, they're all staying till midnight.
Mm.
And now, you know, I've probably witnessed some of the best friendships people have got through almost being in the trenches in those race teams, burning the midnight oil at the time, really hating it, but like creating a bond that's like no other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the instructors, the team that you work with, probably same thing, because let's face it, it's hard turning up at 7 o'clock in the morning, getting all the cars out, talking and teaching and mentoring customers all day is really taxing, and putting
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
back in the evening, it's hard, and you've got to have that release. But
Yeah, you're thinking for two
yeah,
people essentially on the
yeah,
track. You're not driving the car, but you're thinking about how that person is driving and how you're going to impart the information to keep
yeah.
that person around safely and to improve their driving. And you're thinking about getting yourself a break in between, and then and so that
Drinking
that
enough
five
water.
drinking enough water, having 5 or 10 minutes of just reset time to allow you to go again and give the same level of energy to the next customer.
Yeah.
Talking of which, actually, I did want to talk to you about. Let me get this up on the screen so you can tell me a little bit about this in the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes. Tell me about what you've been doing. What do you do now, and what's the story behind this?
Yeah, so it's actually it's quite interesting, Danny. So one of the things I don't think I'm going to digress a little bit to start this story, but it has a point. So when I stopped racing or realised that it wasn't going to happen, looking back now, I was probably severely quite depressed. But you wouldn't known it as depression back then. You just kind of rolled your sleeves and got on with it. Now there's a lot of people, and you would know to be able to train at a level, you've got to convince yourself something's going to happen. I'm going to make it. I'm going to achieve this. So you train, at the Filière, we were training 3 hours a day, 2 hours a day in the car, and then doing French lessons as well. And then when that, so you've got this focal point, you've got this target, and that's where you're heading. When it all stops, and it all stops because you can't afford it anymore, or you can't get the sponsorship, or you can't go racing, that's an incredibly tough time. Now,
Mm.
I personally don't think that motorsport in general do enough to support the kids, the people, the guys, the men, the women that have put their efforts into trying to achieve something and don't make it.
Mm-hmm.
Support them mentally, I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
go, do you know what? Yeah, okay, you didn't do that, but it doesn't matter because you could be a great team manager.
Yeah.
You could be a great mechanic. You could be a great instructor. You could be a great um, business development manager working for one of these automotive companies or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe, I'm not going to name them, but you've only got to look through some of the most successful kart racers and car racers that didn't make it for one reason or another, and
Mm.
then they just mentally just almost go into oblivion, and their lives are a complete wreck for years.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough done to support people off the back of when they finish racing. I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so when I stopped racing, I was struggling with purpose, was struggling with, I was depressed really. And my dad got me into Speedway years ago. We used to go and watch Speedway. And my dad would always go to Speedway every week and take us along, and it was a great evening. Reading, Reading was our local track. So an American Speedway rider called Greg Hancock was riding for Reading. We then went to the World Championships that used to be held in Cardiff, and this says a lot about it's important to be nice, and it's nice to be important, but more important, it's important to be nice. I observed up from above the pits. I looked down and I saw Greg Hancock talking to his customers at the Grand Prix, just doing a show and tell. And I looked at him, and he'd won a world championship, like probably at the time, I think 7 or 8 years previously, and he hadn't won one since. And I just looked at him. Tony Rickardson had done a bike with Penske down in Poole and won some world championships with a Penske frame. I looked at Greg and I thought, I want to help him. I want to help him try and win a world championship again, and I want to be his friend because he just looked like such a professional, awesome dude, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went to Reading Speedway and I thought, this is the purpose that I need. I need this purpose. So after one evening, he finished racing. I jumped in front of him and I said, Greg, you don't know me, Lars Sexton. I work at Prodrive. I want to help you. I want to make a frame for you. So I think he must have thought, who's this crazy kid? Like, yeah, I'm up for it. I'm up for it. Anyway, I went to Prodrive, walked into the director's office and said, Tony, you got a minute? He said, yeah, what do you want? I said, look, I met this guy called Greg Hancock last night. He's a one-time Speedway world champion, won a Speedway world championship about 8 years ago. I still believe in him. I just want to help him. And he said, Lars, get out my office. If you can find two other people to help you, I'll back it. You can use our machines. You can use the off-cut material, but you've got to do it out of hours.
Yeah.
So anyway, lots of toing and froing, and Greg's a monster athlete. Like he's a real lovely guy. Cut a long story short, we were making bits after work. We were welding them. We were making frames. We were making parts. We started to build a relationship with Greg. Fast forward 7 or 8 years, and he subsequently won 3 world championships on the bike that we made for him.
Right.
And whilst we were doing that, because I've raced for so long, BMX and karting, I would watch him and he'd have a crap night, and I'd kind of like, shit, I know how that feels. And I text him and go, come on, dude, you're so close, you're nearly there, and keep doing this and keep doing that. And yeah, really kindly and really nicely, he's openly said that I was a massive factor in him becoming a four-time world champion as opposed to a one-time world champion. And just
Mega.
reframing things, like he won his first world championship and then I think struggled for purpose. And when I met him after he won his second world championship, I said to him, I said, Greg, you're too good just to be a two-time world champion. And you can see in his face, he was just like, oh shit, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, I am too good just to be a two-time world champion. Then he won his third world title, and I said, man, you're too good just to be a three-time world champion. So it was just reframing things. And because I used to
Mm.
love the sports psychology side of it. So when I was racing, I was years ago, I went to watch, I was racing Formula A, struggling. I was seeing a sports psychologist even back then in 1999. Loved it, really loved it.
Mm.
I used to go and watch loads of different sports and spend all the time in the pits watching the riders. So I went to watch a World Championship motocross race at Fox Hills, and they were all out running. They'd go out running in the morning, come back, and they'd be on the exercise bike. So I thought, I went to see my motocross mate, and I said, why are they doing that? And he said, well, it's just mentally and physically. They go out in the morning, go for a run, get their heart rate up, and they don't let it drop too low for too long throughout the day. And it just mentally and physically helps them. So I was like, I'm doing that. So what I started to do is we were staying at the kart tracks in our van. I'd get up at 6:30, go for a run around Shenny. If we were racing at Shenny, I'd run around the lanes around Shenny.
Hmm.
Now, what it did a couple of things. I'd do that and come back and have a cold shower. So I felt $1 million.
Yeah.
I'd have an exercise bike in the awning as well. And before I went out on my race, I'd be on the exercise bike for 30 minutes. People would see that. So that all the other drivers were driving in going, was that, was, was that was that Sexton just running down the road? So then they get to the track, I'd feel $1 million because I got out, got my heart going. You run, you know what it
Yeah.
makes you feel.
Hmm.
I come in, cold shower, and I'd just be like, I'm giving this everything. I'm on it. And people would come up to me, our competitors would come up to me just before time qualifying and go, was that you out running this morning? I was like, yeah, it was. Yeah. I just proper on it. I'm like going for it big time. And the psychological benefit that gave me, because I was like, hang on a minute, we're just about to go out to time qualifying. They're asking me if that was me out running this morning. All I'm focused on is qualifying. So they're not
Hmm.
even focused on qualifying because they're thinking about me on the exercise bike.
Hmm.
Dunny. And then that I got into neuro linguistic programming. So I'm an NLP master practitioner, and I just love the psychological mentoring and
What does that
coaching side of
mean?
it. So
I don't really understand.
NLP,
Yeah.
so neuro linguistic programming. So it's kind of like the map, it's a very NLP thing. So the map is not the territory. So I will look at something and see it, could see it completely different to you.
Hmm.
So, you see a red car and I might be seeing the same red car, but it'll be different in my eyes. And it's
Hmm.
understanding, how you think, what you say, and how you act, and what you do. It's about understanding all of that, um, and not reading people, but helping them elicit stuff really.
Hmm.
So how important your body posture is to how you're feeling, how important the words at which you say are to how you're feeling. So if you've got a child, for example, you shouldn't say don't run because they hear run.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should say stop, walk.
Yeah. Walk
So
slowly.
yeah,
So
so that's
actually, you
NLP.
don't lift off is probably not. Is probably the wrong thing.
So yeah, I'm
No,
just
I
so
know
passionate.
totally what you mean.
Yeah,
So
I
totally what you
can't
mean.
race.
Keep the
I
power on.
can't
Keep
race
the power on.
anymore
Keep the
because I'll
power
be
on.
shit. I'm
Hmm.
out of it too long. So the closest I can get to racing is coaching and mentoring people, and not in
Hmm.
a way of like, not driver coaching. Technically, yeah, I can do a bit technically as well, but there's other guys out there. But that mental kind of like aspect. So, for example,
Yeah.
why Lance Stroll? Okay, the best Lance Stroll has ever driven was when he broke both his ankles, both his wrists.
Hmm.
The guy did phenomenal when he broke both his wrists. because he was up close to his teammate. He was, the car was good at that time. But
Hmm.
then, why has nobody gone, hang on a minute? Why is the best he performed when he broke both his wrists? It's because there was no expectation there. There was no
Mm.
pressure of being Lawrence Stroll's son. There was no
Mm.
pressure of being you're only here because you're the son of a billionaire. He broke his wrist and nobody expected anything of him anyway. So
Yeah.
surprise, surprise, he comes back and he performs really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I told a
And
similar
that's what
story
it's
for,
about.
for Vauxhall Junior when literally we'd run out of money and things had gone wrong with my girlfriend, and I kind of starting to dawn on me that I'm not going to be a Formula One driver. So I was like, oh, I don't care, I'll have a couple of pints. And literally that was what switched it on, because I was relaxed. I was so tense
Yeah,
up to that point. I was so tight because it was
yeah,
all about, Christ, we've got no money to go and do this. I can't crash the car. I don't have enough practice. We probably haven't got the car as well set up as these teams, and it's negative, negative, negative,
yeah.
negative, negative, rather than thinking, right, we've done loads of testing. I know I'm with the best team. Um, Things are going well. I'm feeling fit, and that's it's the opposite, isn't it? There's always a yin and yang, and there's always like you say, different way of looking at things.
What I love about the coaching and the mentoring that I do is that it's really it's really interesting. It's ultimately the same process, but it's so different for everybody. And the reason I like it is, some people coach and they go, you've got to do everything this way. The way I coach is like what works for you. So to your point just then, being relaxed and chilled out might be the optimal performance zone for somebody, but it
Hmm.
might not be for somebody else. They might need to be angry and like, come
Yeah,
on, come on, because they might perform best there in
yeah,
that bubble. The other guy
yeah,
performs best if he's got no expectations and he's chilled out. And the work I do is I work with those athletes and elicit what is their premium state to perform at their best.
yeah,
And it's only as good as the information they're able to give me. But I work with a couple of a few athletes now, and I love it. It's the closest I can get to racing. Real passion for it, and to help other people achieve their dreams for me is just I get a real kick out of it. Probably tell.
yeah, mate. That's
Yeah.
mega, and I think that's a great place to end it on, mate. Because it's good to hear the story of someone coming from, proper grassroots stuff without dough, and still making a living from doing the sport and doing it, authentically and with integrity and enthusiasm. And yeah, that's great, mate.
It's been a great talk, Danny. And look, forget all the podcasts and everything. Just great to have a chat with somebody that I respected from karting,
Yeah, and
from
it's all gone downhill
instructoring.
since that point.
No, Danny, look, and again, it's important. I tell people quite a lot about how I feel and what I'm going through. And when I met you at Alton Park, when I was going through my shit,
Yeah,
and just a perfect timing and a perfect meeting. Danny, how you doing?
yeah,
How are you, Lars? Oh, mate, it's all turned to shit. Got
yeah. We've both
divorced
gone
and
through a
I've
separation, and
I
it was, yeah.
separation and the life shit, and I'm just spiraling and I don't know where I'm going. To have that conversation with you there, and for you to say, "Yes, mate, yeah, me too, and him too, and so too."
Mm,
So yeah, it's a bit of it's said a lot, but it's important to talk. It's important to be open. It's important to tell people about your experiences. Hence, this podcast that you're doing, brilliant, mate. Keep on it.
thank you, Lance. Thank you, Lars. That's really appreciated. If people want to find you, larssexton.co.uk.
Yeah, so I don't keep the website up to. I've got. It's just a basic
It's
website
just
with
a
all the
way of
coaching
contacting you,
stuff
isn't it?
that I'm doing. So yeah, if you contact me, Lars at larssexton.co.uk. There's probably some crazy dodgy videos on YouTube or something old, when I didn't have any grey hairs or anything. But yeah,
Mm.
larssexton.co.uk.
Top man. Lars, thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Great to speak to you, man. I'm sure we'll probably catch up in the next few days anyway. And
Yeah,
yeah,
loved
keep it
it,
pinned, mate.
loved it, Danny. Loved it, Danny. Keep it real, keep it cool. Stay off the homegrown. Be amazing.
All right.
Legend, mate. Keep going.
Top man. Cheers, mate.
Bye, bye, bye.